I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd ignore a warning. But when you've been married to the same man for 34 years, you start to believe you know everything about him. You start to think the life you've built together is solid, unshakable. That's what I thought anyway, right up until the moment a teenage busboy with trembling hands slipped a folded napkin beside my dessert fork and looked at me like I was already dead. It was supposed to be perfect. Our anniversary. 34 years. Jack had chosen Belmont's, this gorgeous steakhouse in downtown Portland with exposed brick walls and candlelight that made everyone look 10 years younger. He'd been acting strange for weeks, distant in a way that felt different from his usual work stress, but I'd convinced myself it was just the pressure from his consulting firm. Men get weird about milestone anniversaries. That's what my sister told me. So I wore the navy dress he loved, the one that still fit after all these years, and I walked into that restaurant determined to have a beautiful night. If you're watching this from somewhere far away, somewhere safe, drop a comment and tell me where you're from. Because I need to know I'm not alone in this. I need to know that what happened to me could have happened to anyone. And if you've ever ignored your gut because you wanted to believe in someone, because you wanted your life to stay exactly as it was, then you need to hear this story. Check the description box below for more stories like this, stories about women who trusted the wrong people and paid for it in ways they never saw coming. Jack smiled at me across the table, that same crooked smile that made me fall in love with him back in 1991. We were kids then, basically. I was 24, fresh out of a bad relationship, working as a paralegal in a firm where he was consulting on a merger case. He brought me coffee one morning without asking how I liked it, and somehow he got it exactly right. 2 creams, 1 sugar, stirred counterclockwise because I'm superstitious. I married him 14 months later. The first course came. Oysters on ice. Jack hated oysters, but he ordered them anyway because I loved them. That should have been my first clue that something was off. He was performing, playing a role. But I was so caught up in the romance of it all, the white tablecloth and the soft jazz playing overhead, that I didn't see it. I squeezed lemon over the shells and told him about my day, about how our daughter Emma had called from Seattle to wish us happy anniversary, about how our son David was finally thinking about going back to school. Jack nodded in all the right places. He reached across the table and held my hand. His palm was sweating. The second course arrived. Lobster bisque. I was mid-sentence, telling him about the garden renovation I wanted to do in the spring, when I noticed the busboy. He couldn't have been more than 19, skinny kid with acne scars and eyes that kept darting toward the kitchen like he was expecting someone to jump out at him. He was clearing the table next to ours, stacking plates with shaking hands, and he kept glancing at me. Not at Jack. At me. I stopped talking. Jack didn't notice. He was staring at his soup like it held the answers to questions he hadn't asked yet. The busboy moved closer. He picked up our empty oyster plates, and as he leaned over, he placed something beside my spoon. A napkin. Folded into a tight square. His fingers brushed mine for just a second, and I felt how cold they were. How terrified he was. I didn't open it right away. I should have. God, I should have. But Jack was watching me now, really watching me, and there was something in his expression that made my stomach twist. Something guilty. Something final. I picked up the napkin like it was nothing, like I was just being tidy, and I unfolded it in my lap beneath the table where Jack couldn't see. 4 words. Black ink. Shaky handwriting. Leave. Now. My heart stopped. I looked up at the busboy, but he was already gone, disappearing through the swinging kitchen doors like a ghost. The restaurant suddenly felt smaller. The music too loud. The candlelight too bright. I could feel my pulse in my throat, in my wrists, behind my eyes. I looked at Jack. He was watching me. Not with concern. With calculation. I've replayed that moment 1,000 times since then, and I still don't know if he saw the napkin. If he knew what it said. If he was waiting to see what I'd do. All I know is that when I grabbed his hand and stood up, when I said we needed to go right now, his face didn't change. He just stood with me slowly, like we had all the time in the world. And that's when I saw them. 3 men. Blocking every exit. One at the front door. Tall, bald, wearing a black jacket that didn't quite hide the bulk beneath his arm. One at the side exit near the bathrooms. Shorter, stocky, with dead eyes and a tattoo crawling up his neck. And one at the kitchen entrance. The biggest of them all, arms crossed, staring directly at me. They weren't moving. They were just standing there. Waiting. My legs went weak. The room tilted. I gripped Jack's hand so hard I felt his bones shift beneath my fingers, and I whispered, "Jack, we need to leave. Now." He looked at me with something I'd never seen before. Pity. And then he said the words that shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. "We can't." I didn't understand what he meant. We can't. What does that even mean? Of course we could leave. We were in a public restaurant. There were other people around. A couple celebrating an engagement 2 tables over. A family with young kids near the window. An older gentleman eating alone by the bar. Surely, in a room full of witnesses, we could just walk out. Surely, those 3 men wouldn't do anything with all these people watching. But Jack wasn't moving. He was still holding my hand, but it felt wrong now, like he was holding me in place instead of holding me close. His thumb wasn't rubbing gentle circles on my skin like it usually did. It was just pressing down, firm and unyielding, like a warning. I pulled away from him. Stepped back. My chair scraped against the floor, loud enough that a few people turned to look. The man at the front door shifted his weight. The one by the bathrooms uncrossed his arms. "Jack, what is happening?" He opened his mouth to answer, but before he could say anything, the busboy reappeared. That same terrified kid, moving through the restaurant with his head down, pretending to refill water glasses. He passed our table without looking at me, but I heard him. Just 3 words, so quiet I almost missed them. "Second floor. Staff exit." I didn't think. I just moved. I grabbed my purse, turned away from Jack, and walked toward the back of the restaurant like I was heading to the bathroom. My heart was hammering so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I could feel Jack's eyes on my back. I could feel those 3 men watching me, tracking my every step. The bathroom hallway was narrow, dimly lit, with framed black and white photos of old Portland lining the walls. There was a door at the end marked staff only. I pushed through it without hesitation. The stairwell was concrete and cold, nothing like the warm elegance of the dining room. Bare bulbs overhead. The smell of grease and bleach. I kicked off my heels and ran, taking the stairs 2 at a time, my dress bunched in one fist, my phone in the other. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get out. The second floor was a storage area. Metal shelving units stacked with linens and bulk supplies. Industrial sinks. A freight elevator with an out-of-order sign taped to the door. And at the far end, a fire exit with a glowing red sign above it. I ran toward it. My bare feet slapped against the cold floor. My breath came in sharp, painful gasps. I was almost there. Almost free. And then I heard footsteps behind me. Heavy. Fast. Getting closer. I didn't turn around. I just ran harder, faster, until my hand hit the push bar on the fire exit and the door flew open into the night. Cold air hit my face. Rain. I was in an alley behind the restaurant, surrounded by dumpsters and delivery trucks and the distant sound of traffic. I didn't know which way to go. Left or right. I chose left and ran, my feet splashing through puddles, my dress soaked and heavy. I made it maybe 20 feet before someone grabbed my arm. I screamed. Tried to pull away. But the grip was too strong, too sure, and when I turned to fight, I saw his face. It was the busboy. He wasn't hurting me. He was pulling me toward a parked van, old and rust-spotted, with the back doors already open. There was a woman inside. Mid-40s, maybe, with short gray hair and a scar running from her temple to her jaw. She reached out a hand. "Get in. Now." I hesitated. I didn't know these people. For all I knew, I was running from one trap straight into another. But then I heard voices behind me, shouting, and I saw shadows moving at the mouth of the alley, and I made a choice. I climbed into the van. The woman pulled me inside and slammed the doors shut. The busboy jumped into the driver's seat and the van lurched forward, tires squealing, and we tore out of the alley and onto the street. I was thrown against the metal wall, my shoulder slamming hard enough to bruise. The woman steadied me, handed me a blanket. Her voice was calm, almost kind. "You're safe now. For the moment." I was shaking so hard I couldn't speak. My teeth were chattering. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. I wrapped the blanket around myself and tried to breathe, tried to make sense of what had just happened. "Who are you?" I finally managed to ask. The woman didn't answer right away. She was looking at me with something that felt like recognition, like she knew me even though we'd never met. Then she said, "Someone who got out. Just like you." "I don't understand. What's happening? Why were those men?" She cut me off. "Your husband, Jack. He's not who you think he is." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that Jack was a good man, a consultant, a father, my partner for 34 years. But the words died in my throat. Because deep down, in the part of me I'd been ignoring for months, maybe even years, I already knew. The woman leaned forward. Her eyes were hard, unflinching. "He owes money to people you don't want to meet. A lot of money. And tonight, he was going to pay off that debt by selling you." The world stopped. The sound of the van's engine faded. The rain against the windows disappeared. All I could hear was my own heartbeat, slow and loud and impossibly heavy. Selling me. Like I was an object. Like I was nothing. I've heard people talk about moments that change everything. Moments where your entire understanding of your life just collapses. I never really believed them. I thought those were just stories people told to make their pain sound more dramatic. But sitting in that van, wrapped in a stranger's blanket, listening to the truth I'd been too afraid to see, I understood. Everything I thought I knew was a lie. The van stopped in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. Industrial area. Warehouses with broken windows. Chain-link fences. No streetlights. The woman helped me out and led me into a building that looked abandoned from the outside but was surprisingly clean inside. There were other women there. 6, maybe 7. All different ages. All with the same haunted look in their eyes. The woman with the scar introduced herself as Linda. She'd been running this safe house for 3 years, ever since she escaped from a trafficking ring that nearly killed her. The busboy, whose name was Tyler, had been placed at Belmont's specifically to watch for women like me. Women whose husbands had gotten involved with the wrong people. Women who were being used as collateral. Linda sat me down at a table in what used to be a break room. She made me tea, strong and bitter, and waited until I could hold the cup without spilling it. Then she told me the rest. Jack had been laundering money for a criminal organization for the past 5 years. It started small, she said. Consulting work that paid too well. Clients who didn't ask questions. By the time he realized what he was really doing, he was in too deep. And when he tried to get out, they told him the price. $500,000. Or you. I couldn't process it. My mind kept circling back to stupid, irrelevant details. Like how Jack had kissed me that morning before we left for the restaurant. How he'd told me I looked beautiful. How he'd held the car door open for me like he always did. Had he known, even then, what he was planning to do? Linda was still talking. She was telling me about the organization, about how they operated, about the women they'd trafficked and the men they'd killed. But I wasn't really listening. I was thinking about Emma and David. About whether they knew. About whether Jack had planned to tell them I'd just disappeared, run off, left them all behind. I looked at Linda. My voice came out flat, empty. What happens now? She didn't sugarcoat it. You can't go home. You can't contact your family, not until we figure out how deep this goes. If Jack knows you escaped, he'll tell them. And they'll come looking for you. So I'm supposed to just hide? Pretend I don't exist? Linda's expression softened. I know it feels impossible. But you're alive. That's more than a lot of women in your situation can say. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the tea across the room and demand that someone fix this, that someone make it make sense. But I didn't. I just sat there, numb and broken, while Linda explained the plan. They'd move me to a different safe house in 2 days. Somewhere outside Portland. I'd get a new phone, a burner, so I could eventually reach out to my kids without being traced. Tyler would go back to the restaurant, keep his cover, and gather information about Jack and the people he was working with. And Linda would start building a case, collecting evidence, finding a way to bring the whole operation down. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was survival. But as I sat there in that cold, fluorescent-lit room, surrounded by women I didn't know, I felt something start to shift inside me. Beneath the shock and the fear and the grief, there was anger. Raw, burning, unstoppable anger. Jack had been willing to trade me, to sell me, to let me be taken by men who would have destroyed me in ways I couldn't even fully imagine. And he'd done it to save himself. I thought about our wedding day, about the promises we'd made, about the life we'd built, the home, the children, the decades of trust I'd given him without question. And I realized that none of it had been real. Not for him. Maybe not ever. Linda must have seen something change in my face because she reached across the table and took my hand. I know what you're thinking. And I'm telling you right now, revenge is dangerous. It's messy. It can get you killed. I met her eyes. I don't care. She didn't argue. She just nodded, slow and understanding, like she'd been waiting for me to say it. Then we'll do it smart. We'll do it right. And when we're done, he'll wish he'd never met you. Over the next 2 weeks, I learned more than I ever wanted to know. Tyler brought back information from the restaurant. Jack had been there 3 more times since our anniversary, always with different men, always looking more desperate. He'd filed a missing persons report, played the worried husband, even went on the local news to beg for my safe return. I watched the footage on Linda's laptop, and I barely recognized him. He looked older, thinner, scared. Good. Linda had contacts, people who owed her favors, people who knew how to dig up dirt that was buried deep. We found bank accounts Jack had hidden. Transactions that traced back to shell companies and offshore accounts. Evidence of bribes, extortion, trafficking. Enough to put him away for the rest of his life. But I didn't just want him in prison. I wanted him to feel what I'd felt. That moment of absolute betrayal. That sickening realization that the person you trusted most in the world had been lying to you all along. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, someone you built your entire life around, then you understand. You understand that anger isn't always loud. Sometimes it's cold, patient, calculating. And I'd spent 34 years learning how to be patient. Linda helped me set the trap. It was simple, really. Elegant. We leaked information to the organization that Jack had been skimming money, keeping some for himself. We planted evidence in his accounts, doctored transactions, created a trail that led straight back to him. And then we waited. It took 3 days. 3 days before they came for him. I wasn't there when it happened. Linda wouldn't let me be. She said it was too dangerous, that if anything went wrong, I'd be exposed. But Tyler was there. He watched from across the street, camera hidden, recording everything. They took Jack in broad daylight. Right outside his office building, in front of a dozen witnesses. 2 men in suits walked up to him, said something I'll never know, and he went with them. No struggle. No shouting. He just got into their black SUV and disappeared. Tyler showed me the footage later. I watched it 4 times. Studied Jack's face, the way his shoulders slumped, the way his hands shook as he reached for the car door. He knew. He knew exactly what was happening. And he knew he deserved it. They found him 2 days later. Alive, but barely. Dumped in an industrial park on the outskirts of the city, beaten so badly he was unrecognizable. The hospital kept him in a medically induced coma for a week. When he woke up, the FBI was waiting. The evidence we'd planted had done its job. The organization believed Jack had betrayed them, and they'd nearly killed him for it. But the FBI had been building their own case, watching these people for years, and Jack's beating gave them the opening they needed. They offered him a deal. Testify against the organization, give them names and locations and details, and they'd put him in witness protection instead of prison. He took it. Of course he took it. I heard all this through Linda's contacts. I was still in hiding, still living under a fake name in a safe house 2 hours outside Portland. My kids thought I was dead. The official story was that I'd been abducted, that my body had never been found. It was the only way to keep them safe, Linda said. If they knew I was alive, the organization might use them to get to me. So I stayed hidden. I watched from a distance as Jack's trial unfolded, as the news covered the takedown of a major trafficking ring, as my husband's face was plastered across every screen and newspaper. He looked small in those courtroom photos. Broken. Pathetic. Part of me felt vindicated. But mostly I just felt empty. Linda came to see me on a Tuesday afternoon in late November. The leaves were gone from the trees, the sky gray and heavy with the promise of snow. She sat across from me at the small kitchen table and slid an envelope toward me. It's over. The trial's done. The organization's been dismantled. You're safe now. I stared at the envelope. Inside was a new identity. A birth certificate, a driver's license, a social security card. All in a name I didn't recognize. What about my kids? Linda's expression was careful, measured. You can reach out to them now. Slowly. Carefully. But you can never tell them the whole truth. For their safety and yours. I opened the envelope. Looked at the woman staring back at me from the driver's license photo. She had my face, but she wasn't me. She was someone new. Someone who'd survived something unthinkable and come out the other side. I thought about calling Emma. About hearing her voice, telling her I was alive, trying to explain why I'd let her believe I was dead for 4 months. I thought about David, about whether he'd even want to talk to me after everything. And I thought about Jack, living somewhere under a new name, protected by the same government that should have been protecting the women he'd helped destroy. The anger was still there. It probably always would be. But it had changed shape. It wasn't sharp anymore. It was just heavy. Linda was watching me. You did something most women don't get to do. You fought back. You survived. And you made sure he paid for what he tried to do to you. I nodded. I knew she was right. But it didn't feel like victory. It just felt like loss. I've been living under this new name for almost 8 months now. I've spoken to Emma 3 times, always from burner phones, always brief. She cried the first time she heard my voice. Asked me where I'd been, why I'd left, whether I was ever coming back. I told her I couldn't explain, not yet, but that I loved her and I was safe. She's angry with me. I don't blame her. David won't take my calls. Linda says he might come around eventually, but I'm not sure I believe her. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive, even when the person who hurt you was trying to save themselves. I think about Jack sometimes. Wonder if he thinks about me. Wonder if he regrets it, or if he just regrets getting caught. I'll never know. And maybe that's the hardest part. Not getting answers. Not getting closure. Just having to live with the fact that the person I loved most in the world was willing to destroy me to save himself. But I'm still here. I'm still breathing. I rebuilt my life once before, when I was 24 and heartbroken and didn't think I'd ever be happy again. And I'll rebuild it again now. It'll look different. It'll feel different. But it'll be mine. If you've made it this far, if you've listened to this whole messy, painful story, then thank you. Thank you for bearing witness to what happened to me. For letting me tell it in my own words. And if you've ever felt betrayed, ever felt like your whole world was collapsing, I want you to know this: you're stronger than you think. You can survive things you never thought possible. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying the person who hurt you. It's refusing to let them destroy you. Check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about survival, about strength, about women who refused to stay silent. Because we're not alone. None of us are. And that's the only thing that keeps me going.